morning and welcome to the beach community for the October edition of the Provost's Message. And we are excited to welcome to the mic this morning our fearless leader, President Jane Close Conoley. Good morning, Jane.
Good morning, Karen. I wish I was fearless. I try to be courageous, but I'm certainly not fearless. But I appreciate the affirmation there.
Well, that is the way the community sees you as we've navigated through these unprecedented times, and your poise and grace and always affirming the beach to move forward. We just certainly appreciate your leadership. And we try to take example from the energy that you bring to the campus as our leader. So we thank you and we uplift you.
Thank you. I need all that lifting. Please don't stop. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we have a great team, don't we? I mean, that's what's making our progress possible, I believe.
We do. And you know, I saw this from the outside. I'm now in my third month here as a member of the Beach family. And it seems that what I thought I saw in the Beach imprimatur is true. And seeing such from the inside is just thrilling. I'm just proud to be a member of this community and what we're trying to do on behalf of our students, uplifting our faculty members and their intellectual pursuits, and our dedicated staff who come every day. You know, we have that Go Beach sign. We talked about the statue, and you know, we've talked about when people see that sign, it's like you kind of hit the gas and get to your office so that you can get down to the business of the beach for the day. So it's incredible.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were saying such great things, but I wanted to just pick out one thing that you said that I think is so important, that what you saw from the outside was replicated on the inside. And you know, I find one aspect of leadership that I have tried to develop and tried to be mindful of is that to always be the same person. You know, not to have oh, here's the way I talk to the inner group, and oh, this is the other way I talk to the outer group, or I'm this way with people who are donors, or you know, elected officials or whatever. I think that reliability and predictability among our leadership team really permeates. I hope it does, and I think it creates a level of authenticity that I hope that you have been able to experience as well.
And you know what? That's the word, authenticity. I remember my first Zoom meeting with you. It didn't feel like an interview. It felt like a chat among colleagues, you know, talking about things, all things higher education and all things great about the beach. And your personality has been the same. It's not deviated, not in any way from the very first impression that I've had. Now, you can be tough. You can be direct, but you do so with grace.
As you can too, Provost Scissum Gunn. Yeah. I think that's our jobs, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Well, thank you for taking time. We have some questions that we'd like to get your thoughts around, right? In this unprecedented, once in a lifetime moment in history, we've opened a campus. We've executed repopulation plans, and some of them have been moving targets, right? But I think as we're deeper into the term, we see the power of the beach from our students, our faculty, and our staff as it relates to compliance with some of the safety guidelines that we've been championing, right? If we look at some data, I think we're leading the CSU in some metrics, right? As it relates to, to our safety guidelines and compliance. And, you know, we launched a very powerful convocation earlier in the academic year to bring the campus community into a place of oneness, to acknowledge the tough times that we've been through, and to allow people to sit with those times, but yet to move toward a place of hope, because we are the beach, right? And that's what we do. We take those circumstances that we face and we put that beach stamp on them, and we move forward. And our very audacious, as I called it from the first time I began to read it, Beach 2030 strategic vision, we've launched in earnest. So, you know, those are good things that have happened in a short period of time in the middle of very turbulent and unpredictable days. So we want to check on you. We want to see how you're doing, and just allow you some space to give voice to the beach around these times. So we want to ask you a few questions and get your ideas.
Mhm.
Okay with you?
Great. I look forward to it.
All right. All right. So let's start with you. How have you been doing during this time, this unprecedented time?
Well, it's been, I'd say my overall feeling is that I've been privileged to be working in this role during this historic time. I've thought back about, people before us, generations before us who have gone through tremendous adversity. My own parents, would talk about, being in the Depression, and my grandparents having to immigrate, from a country that wasn't friendly toward them to a brand new country. And everybody's family can look back and know that they had ancestors who dealt with difficult times. And eventually, at first, of course, it was so uncertain that I was trying to take in all the information I could all at the same time. But I really come to see that this was an advantage, or I'll say a privilege and a blessing, to have had this chance to really grapple with something so unusual and so big and so important in the lives of others. And so it would be bad, I think, if I would have had to sit on the sidelines and watch somebody else do it. But no, I could be in there, and I could be testing myself. I could be building deeper and more trusting relationships with the team. And, as you know, our team got bigger because we needed additional expertise from medicine, from health and safety, from building services, and so on and so forth. So certainly I've had some sleepless nights, but right now the major takeaway for me is, wasn't I lucky to be in this spot at this time?
Wow. And that goes back to the person you are. There are a number of ways that you could have, framed your position in these times, right? But you came with such incredibly positive reflections on feeling privilege and an advantage to being who you are in leadership at this time, and building relationships so that we could all rely on each other, trust one another to put our best thoughts forward through these spaces. So that's a testament to who you are, Jane.
Thank you. Thanks for saying that.
There are many people who could have come from a very negative space, a very dour space, but that's just who you are, and you always find those brilliant points to reach toward.
Well, thanks for saying that.
Some people call you fearless.
You might. I'm glad you didn't say, "Don't be such a Pollyanna." But, although I always thought Pollyanna had some advantages, trying to look for the strengths in every situation, I think gives people courage to do the same and to work together. So
courage is a big word these days.
Yes.
Courage.
It really is.
So how has it been leading the campus this past year?
Obviously we faced, and we continue to face, really unprecedented challenges, as you alluded to earlier. We hadn't had to do all this stuff before. I'm thinking at this moment in time, the notion that we have to monitor who's getting a weekly test. We don't have an infrastructure to do that. And so I think it's been challenging in the sense of developing new processes, creating new partnerships, maybe with external vendors. But the whole time I felt that everybody was pulling together.
Yes.
Your academic affairs, your area, working hard to support faculty, educate faculty in new processes, are certainly our finance and administration people. I mean, working with, last year, speaking of historic times, a historic budget cut in 1 year. But yet, figuring out how to use some of the federal funds to assist our students and make sure that campus was clean and so on and so forth. So, I think I'd say leading the campus this past year certainly has made me appreciate the individuals that we have in leadership. Not that we always made the right call, perhaps, but I always felt like we talked it out, listened to each other respectfully, and then made the best decision based on insufficient data, or incomplete data at least, that we could.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard it called building a plane as we fly it. And and in some moments it certainly felt that way. But I think we embraced our roles as engineers and designers and all of that within that scenario, right?
Mhm.
And put our very best feet forward together. And as you said, trusted one another to make decisions. Because, this is like a small town, right? We've got almost 40,000 people in our care. And so the decisions aren't small that need to be made. So it's a really Herculean effort, I think, that we've pulled forward. And here we are. We opened our campus and per our plans, we made adjustments as we needed to, and the beach is moving forward.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So a glimpse into Jane, how do you approach making difficult decisions?
Well, I try to listen before I make a decision. I try to hear, going around the room and sometimes outside the room in terms of other supporters or people who are stakeholders in a particular decision. I try not to come in with a pre-cooked decision. And I remember one particular example, and we of course had to close down our childcare centers. And I knew from my own experience, and obviously from the experience of so many of my colleagues over the years and currently, that excellent childcare is really a foundation for our faculty and our staff success. They can't be at their best if they're worried about how their child is being taken care of. So I knew we were going to discuss whether or not we could open at least partly our childcare facilities. And I really wanted us to, just for the reason I just shared. I just felt it was so important for all the parents and other caregivers we had on campus. But fortunately, I used my usual process of having other people talk before me. And by the time it got around to really making the decision, it was clear that we couldn't do it in a safe way. We couldn't do it in a financially reasonable way. And we would be we'd be taking a chance serving even a small number of children. So that sticks out in my mind because it was one of the rare times that I entered the meeting thinking, okay, this is what we have to do. And well, we didn't do it. So, that was the right decision. And now we're open with no negative, cases of COVID. And I think it's been a big support to our faculty and our staff to have their children back in good care on our campus.
That's a powerful example. And I think one of the things that I read into that, right, is that you don't bring ego into this work. You bring the right decisions into this work, and you rely upon others to give you feedback, to help you gather your thoughts and all of that. But ultimately you make decisions, and you're not afraid to change that decision, right, if it seems like it is the best thing to do. And those are hallmarks of leadership. And I think that's one of those are examples that your community really appreciate about you. You're very approachable, and you don't come in with a stone set mindset about a thing because I decided this and this is the way it's going to be. You listen to your peeps. So that is truly an impressive, I think, value that you bring to leadership, and it percolates through the campus in many ways, but it starts with you.
Well, that's very kind of you to say. I'm very blessed to have either arrived and found great peeps in my environment, and also been able to hire some extraordinary folks, as you I hope you know personally. I think the issue of ego, I certainly do have opinions, but maybe it's my background as a psychologist. You learn early as a psychologist that it's not about you.
Yes.
It's really about the other and whoever that other is. And I've had the experience in the days where I actually did some therapy, either with children or with families, of in psychology, you might call it flow, or being so connected to the other person that it was really restful for me because my own mind, with all the, the things that were bothering me or swirling around, got pushed aside. And so I think that practice in the therapy world for me, and others will develop it in other ways, really has given me, some advantage, maybe for others. It's also helped me not get kind of crushed by negative feedback, because inside, again, in therapy, your patient may say something negative about you, and you're trained to think, what is it really about you, or what's the situation that's causing this? Now, it could be about you. I mean, obviously we all make mistakes, but it's really helped me because, as you know, none of us are on the leadership team are immune from 360 evaluations all the time. People don't hesitate to share their opinions. Sometimes from as far away as the UK. I remember getting a note from somebody who said I was doing something wrong, and it was from the UK. I thought, wow, I'm doing something wrong, and something really big. So,
you're doing something wrong. At least you were doing it wrong globally. So
yeah, at least I made a global. I love the international side of it. Yeah, but it's and of course some of it is just practice. But it's always a balancing act, isn't it? Because you have to listen.
It is. It
is.
is.
We all have blind spots about how we come across, or what we're committed to, that may narrow our focus or narrow our alternatives. And so it's finding that balance of listening, but not getting crushed by negativity.
And, I hope people who will tune into our conversation, who have aspirations to leadership, will pick up on some of those nuggets, right? And know that some of these tenets around realizing that it's not about you, and realizing that, don't take it personally. You have to have a tough skin to do this work. And if you aspire to walking in some of these administrative roles, make sure that you tune into some of these nuggets of wisdom, because they're really going to help, right, as you develop and position oneself to assume roles in the ways that we have to do so in toward as it relates to leading our campus. So I hope those that are listening will pick up on some of those nuggets of wisdom.
Yeah, we have lots of people on campus who who are already leaders in their own capacity, but would be fabulous at campus-wide efforts. And so I want to be helpful to those people.
You bet. You bet. What are some of your top priorities for the campus right now?
Well, the top one is really alluding to your opening remarks, is that we can maintain our momentum on supporting our students' health, safety, our faculty and staff health and safety, and their educational progress. I mean, that's the key thing. We think that bringing our students back on campus will assist many of them to do better, because not everybody is equally, has equal access, or is equally well taught remotely. So, and those have remained, of course, top priorities: health and safety and educational attainment for the entire, well, maybe it's always the top priority. Other things that are on my mind, of course, are, we're in a phase of our developing a philanthropic campaign that I'm very excited about, because I know it will add an edge of excellence for our faculty, for our staff, and for our students. So we're doing a lot of work there, meeting folks. I'll do something tonight at the Miller House to introduce an exciting new program possibility to people that we hope will be interested in investing in it. So it's a top priority for me, because we lost some time in the pandemic. We couldn't visit people. We couldn't have people over. We couldn't communicate in the same way. So I'm really trying to devote a lot of my time to that, because it will really make noticeable difference for hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of our students, and many, many of our faculty, because you know very well that we kind of operate at a kind of bare minimum of state support. And if we really want to add those extra things, getting private philanthropic support from, individuals, from corporations, from foundations, is really the key to that extra event, an extra access, for example, to high impact practices. We heard, you and I were together hearing recently about how private funds supported local internships, paid local internships for many of our students, and what a difference that was. Almost half of them got job offers based on that. And they all said how impactful it was, how influential it was in them learning more about themselves, that we wouldn't have been able to do that without private support. We know an internship done right, supervised right, organized right is a high impact practice. So,
that's right.
So that keeping a growing number of enough resources so we can keep growing the number of our students who have access to that, whether it's research with faculty, whether it's international travel, whether it's being given a whole semester group project, something like that, that takes extra resources.
Yeah, astute campuses have to recognize that, especially those that are state assisted or state supported, that there are definitely other revenue streams that have to be cultivated and pursued in order to round out the fullness of our mission and the kinds of programming and opportunities and experiences that we want to bring forth for the community, for our students, for our faculty, for staff, our engagements with the external community. Here we sit in the LBC. It's a mutually enriching opportunity to engage partners in the community, right? Not only for here at the beach, but I know we reciprocally enrich our position here in the Long Beach area. So, and those partnerships are key. Mm-hmm. Conversations, and sometimes they start with conversations. You have to be present, and you have to find opportunities to engage with entities that are interested in your mission and want to learn more about how they can potentially help move forward outside of dependence on state funds, right? And that enriches those organizations as well, because in the philanthropic spaces, their aim is to find ways to do good. Mm-hmm. And find partners to do good with. Yes. So I'm just excited. I'll be there at the event that you mentioned, and I'm excited to hear the conversations myself.
Yeah. Well, it's so important. And I just thought of something else I wanted to say about priorities when we're talking about adding to the experience of our faculty, staff, and students. Our system is about to launch a major salary study, and for the future of the beach and the future of the other 22 campuses, we have to be able to partner around state funding in a way that is at least somewhat reflective of market salaries and benefits.
Yes.
It's just we're losing people, and we live in such a high rent district, high housing costs, very well, because you've been looking around.
Yes.
We have to grapple with that. I think that's a big threat, that as grateful as I am to the state for its support, that the state hasn't really gotten its arms around what it takes to have, this kind of accessible, high quality, excellent, really cutting edge learning experiences that lead to the workforce and the innovation force that California needs. So we really need a kind of reset button so that we don't lose our information technology people, or our computer scientists, or our greatest artists, so on and so forth. We want those people to be in touch with our students. Our students deserve the best, and they deserve the best on the staff side as well. So I certainly, it's a priority for me, and I speak about it every time I get a chance, about really looking realistically about what people should be paid, essentially.
Indeed. And I know that people who are tuning in will appreciate that, right? Because You know, people do work hard, and our market is tough. In the CSU, the salaries are as they are, but we don't want. We want solutions so that people don't feel devalued in the very dedicated work that they bring forward every single day.
Yes.
So we're looking forward to that study and other developments that will bring some levels of balance and progress around the way we value through compensation,
Yes.
in other ways our people who are dedicated not only to the CSU but to the beach.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I know that you have been involved in equity conversations. Let me just kind of go back to my, you know, looking at the beach. There are vids out online where you engaged in inserted yourself into some conversations, right? As there were some very tough situations, just, you know, egregious situations that have taken place over the past year and a half. In society at large, and you put yourself in there, and you had something to say about these developments. So you've been having equity conversations. What are some of the outcomes that you are hopeful for the beach as it relates to our community being a place of welcome for, and I say this in all caps, ALL, for all who are here and want to be here?
Yes, well, thanks for bringing this up because it is so central to our future. You know, I think we're a work in progress. I'm really pleased with all the data we now have up on our Equity and Change website. We've tried to make it easily accessible. People want to know how many of this kind of person is here, how many are they getting promoted, or how many of these students are here and are they persisting. So we're trying to be, I think the first step in equity and inclusion and diversity is to be honest and transparent, so you don't hold anything back. And, you know, sometimes the information is not very flattering. You know, why is it that we still have just under 4% African-American students when we've talked about needing more, wanting more for the whole time I've been here? So
Yes.
that's, you know, we can't duck from that. But I've been happy, for example, our hires of tenure track hires who came on board just this fall, 70% of them represent either African-American, Asian, or Latinx.
That's right.
Imagine the sea change that is in terms of hiring faculty. Now, obviously, it doesn't turn overnight like the sea, which does. But so I'm happy with that outcome, and that's the direct result of Provost's program of assigning equity advocates and insisting that all search committees get training before the search begins. And I think there's a lot of good intentions and a lot of commitment to this area. But as I try to explain to folks, the way we hire, especially faculty, is very distributed. So you have to get everybody on board. You know, it's not like you hire the faculty members. I've been very pleased with the way our police have reacted to the context around them by forming a community engagement board. They did that. They wanted to do it. They are meeting with people. They wanted to hear what their perception is. And of course, they have also redoubled their commitment to community policing. They've all had training now in principled policing that was really an outcome of the Obama era of 21st century community policing. I'm pleased that we have more African-American students this year than we did last year in terms of the incoming class. That's very exciting. And I'm also pleased that we have, and you've helped tremendously in this area, Karyn. We've really put a laser focus on eliminating opportunity gaps. You know the data as I know them. Everybody's been getting better in terms of four-year graduation rates, persistence, all that, all good. But the gaps between the groups, especially of our first-year Native students, the ones that start with us as first years, those gaps they've narrowed because they were as big as 12 points at one point. Now they're down to about 6. But you know, they should be 0 from my standpoint. That's our goal. Our transfer students, we don't have those opportunity gaps. So I'm pleased with that, but the work ahead of us is a little daunting. I know we will be successful if we all take responsibility for it. It's not the responsibility of our African-American faculty and staff and students to change us. It is my responsibility, is everybody's responsibility. We need consultation. We need to know what what the issues are. So I'm happy about the fundraising through Vice President Cheska's office. We have now an almost $700,000 endowment that will serve to provide paid internships for students who want to work in social justice internship areas. I think that's going to be a big draw for many of our BIPOC students, and really, put our best out there in the community. When our students go out in the community, that's obviously the best thing that can happen. So, along the way, I've been very impressed. Every unit that I'm in touch with has created a plan. They've gotten training. We've had an implicit bias, all of our MPPs.
Yes.
They've had special speaker series. And I think, I think the awareness is at a good level, that people can't like brush this away anymore. Like, well, what are you complaining about? No, oh, I see. Yes, you're right to really be pointing a finger at this. And I think our teams, our leadership teams, and I think many across the campus are willing to be accountable. And that's the bottom line, listen and then be accountable. So
that's true.
So I think we're moving in the right direction, but I see it as a lifelong work for me.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned something very important, that changes that as of this magnitude, if they happen overnight, they're not legit. Right. This is all about cultural change. It's about the conversations at all levels. When you speak to us as president, from your 30,000 foot level all the way down to the decisions and conversations that are made in units, as it relates to hiring practices, as it relates to conversations about programming, as it relates to strategies around examining data to determine what the baseline, what the situation is, because it's not a crime to be in a particular place. It's a travesty to be in that place and not respond to it. And the big thing that I see about this campus is that those conversations are happening. You move in a lot of spaces, I move in a lot of spaces, and even from individuals whose lived experiences in these spaces that we're talking about may be different, the allyship comes forward, the recognition of the importance of this work, and to keep a context around making sure that our campus is one that it is an equitable environment that's inviting. And we're starting to see that in our faculty members that we're bringing. Now we got to bring them on, and we've got to make them feel welcome. We've got to support their retention, right? The same for our students as well. But having these conversations and grappling with these things and saying, these are the things we need to do, it's happening on our campus. It's absolutely exciting, right? To be in an environment that, the way I phrased it was, this is a campus that has said mea culpa. There's some things that we need to get better at, but we're going to do these things. And I, as a newbie still, am seeing those things take place in various spaces. So your points are absolutely spot on.
I'm so glad that you see it. And I know we can count on you for feedback and ways to accelerate, and refine and do better. And people are, there's no little gloss thing you can do that, that is, okay, that fixes everything.
Yeah.
I wish there was, but I haven't found it yet. But I always say it's good. It's good women live a little longer than many men, because I need more time,
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Have you experienced any unexpected opportunities this year?
Well, I think certainly unexpected. the kind of level of expertise that has been shared with us by our medical director, Dr. Kimberly Fadrin. I didn't expect to get that, that kind of deep and helpful information about the disease, or plague and its variants.
Yes.
And also, I'd say from the Division of Student Affairs, where they have kind of really risen to the occasion of figuring out during when we were mostly remote, how to still keep students engaged. So I think there've been some specific learning things, watching others really rise to the occasion, whether it was in how we're disinfecting the new machines we have that neutralize all bacteria in a few seconds. So that part I've tried to enjoy. I've tried to say, you wouldn't, if it wasn't for this, you wouldn't know this. I wouldn't know about mRNA, I wouldn't know about messenger RNA. I learned it a long time ago. I know you know about it. That's your area. I learned it as I was a biology major, double major, but with psychology. But now I know a lot more about that. So
application wise, right?
Yeah, certainly on the application wise. And we've worked much more closely with our medical director than in previous years, with our health and safety folks, George Alfaro and others, Allison Joy. So getting to know them and being a little bit in their world. And then, somewhat unexpectedly, and just because it was so new, it was unexpected, the great partnerships we've been able to develop with the city.
Yes.
We're working now on having another clinic, a booster shot clinic on the campus for those, as people become eligible now. All educators are eligible, and those over 65. And with certain other entities, like we worked with Kaiser, so they could deliver vaccine. Our health department here in Long Beach, they've been doing testing and vaccination to really add to our capacity just from our student health center. So all of these things, if you'd asked me 2 years ago, are these people good partners? It would have been in a kind of abstract way. I'd say, yeah, I think they would be. But now I see that they don't just wait for us to go to them. They often come to us and say that we want to be part of a solution here. It's on my mind a little separate from a lot separate from COVID, but another disaster, this oil spill that we're dealing with. But don't you know, our great faculty in the College of Natural Science and Mathematics immediately rose to the occasion.
That's right.
I understand NOAA is coming on
Yes.
campus to monitor fish kills or fish, the status of our fisheries based on the oil spill. So what an opportunity.
Huge.
I mean, I'll be kind of sitting, as you said, 30,000 feet away from it, but to have a group of people who rise to the occasion does create opportunities for learning. If we just run away from it and put our heads in the sand, then it hasn't been an opportunity. It's just been a lost year or year and a half in our lives.
Yeah. Wow, that is so true. And I tell you what, you hit on a major point. We have experts on this campus who rise to be able not only to represent the beach, but to represent to provide knowledge around whatever that particular incident may be. And that just speaks to the kind of talent that we have here on this campus. And we want to continue to support and make the beach a place for faculty, people who are coming out of the field to think about the beach as a place, well, wow, that's a place that I really want to be, for staff members to come and feel, that kind of value. So it's these kinds of incidents that really shine a light on the kind of commitment and talent that we have here on this campus.
It really does. It really does.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, and in this case, and it relates completely to one of our core values of contributing to the public good.
Absolutely.
An oil spill threatens everyone, rich, poor, whatever your political party, whatever, and that we can be part, we can contribute to part of a solution or part of a plan, makes me feel great and very, very proud.
You bet. You bet. That's so well said. Well, you know what? I know that you're busy running this university. I've got one more question that I'd like to ask you. I just thank you for taking the time for us to just have a conversation. We always have the coolest chats. We do. You know, we have our one-on-one meetings, and we'll have an agenda, and we'll eventually get to the agenda because we've got so much other stuff that we enjoy touching base on. But what has, if you think about this year and a half, is there anything that you think you would have done differently, that, you know, decisions that you made or actions that you took that you reflect on and say, that might have been kind of a goose egg. If I had the chance to do that again, I'd do it a different way. Are there any points that you'd reflect on that you may have done differently?
Yeah, if I had, if I had known really what this pandemic really represented. You were not quite with us yet, but you know, when we first asked the faculty to stay home for 2 days and kind of change their classes to remote, we said that we'd be back in person in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
And then we thought, well, we'll certainly, and that this is March, right?
Yeah, March 17th.
Yeah, and then we realized, no, it's not going to be 2 weeks. I don't even think it's going to be at the end of the semester. Then we thought, well, maybe we can have commencement in August. You know, so I don't blame myself because we were all learning as we went along the way. But if I had something that I would like to do over, it would have been great to give people a sense of certainty. Here's what we're doing. And here's our best guess about how long it will last. Because I know during that period, there was a sense of unrest, and is anybody paying attention? Do we have a leader? What are leadership people doing? Because we were, you know, collecting data, as you said, we're building the plane as we were flying it. And I would have been more, even if I didn't know all the things I know now, I should have been more overt with saying to people, look, we don't know yet, but we'll keep telling you as we do know, rather than let people kind of, you know, swing and sway in this kind of sea of information and misinformation and just, you know, scientific. I mean, that's how science happens. You learn more, you learn more, you learn more. Right. Usually people aren't watching it so carefully, so they don't understand that you often go down some rabbit holes. But if I could do something differently, I would have been more open about my uncertainty. And if I had to do it all over again, knowing what I know now, I would have just said to people, okay, we're going to do this for the long haul. So let's get ourselves ready. Let's give you the support you need from academic technology services. Let's give the students from student affairs and ITS and so on and so forth, you know. So if it happens again, which I'm really praying it will never happen again in our lifetime, you know, we'll be better prepared because we'll know how plagues work. Apparently reading about them has not been enough to convince all of us about what to do. So
1918 was a long time ago.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. I'm old, but I'm not that old. Yeah.
Many things changed. But, you know, I think that in retrospect, and I'm not saying that we in retrospect, because we have come out of the pandemic, we're still very much in it.
Very much in it.
Right. But looking at the way we entered, I think there are many places that we should give ourselves grace. And I hope that people that are listening in understand that at every single point, and I was at another campus in the CSU at that time, and I can say even for that environment, the campuses used the information that they had and tried to make the best decisions that they had. But sometimes it was, you know, the decision making was one page ahead of the of the event or that particular matter that needed to be dealt with and developed and have some level of policy and guidance developed around it. So in retrospect, I know that now that we're We're ramping up our operations. We're hoping to have more of a semblance of normal operation, hoping that is our plan as it relates to our instructional capacity, our on-campus presence. I think in retrospect, people will recognize and give grace that we as leaders were working with the best information that we had available to us.
Yes.
And it's a mark of you to say, you know what, I just should have said more to people. I just wish I could have. That's graceful of you to self-reflect and say, on me, maybe I should have communicated more. But that's very graceful as a leader for you to take that position.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. Yeah, and I think, for all of us, as a community and as a networked and close community, One Beach, I feel like we have to give each other the benefit of the doubt, or assume the best. So we're living in a context where you say the wrong word and you're pounced upon. It's over. And I think we need to cultivate a different attitude. Our former chancellor, Timothy White, had an expression where he'd say, I try always to have this act as if this is the first conversation. And so not carry this baggage of you did this 6 months ago and 5 years ago, I remember you did this, but rather you enter each interaction with an openness to what will come. And that would be good for all of us. It would be good for everybody at an individual level, just clears your mind, but it would also be good for us at an institutional level to assume the best. Give feedback if you're worried, but don't imagine a negative kind of cause behind there, or some. I did hear from not our campus, but reading feedback from other campuses, that some people were thinking, well, this is all a plot now to force us all to teach online. I know we didn't really make this up to do that. Now some people have discovered they like teaching online, but I mean, just to go immediately there it's not healthy. So anyway, but thanks. And I appreciate your support. It's very affirming to have a conversation with you. And I'm glad we had a chance to talk today.
Indeed. You got it. Well, can we entreat our community with 2 words together? The 2 words that we like to say best?
Absolutely. Go Beach.
Go Beach.
Go Beach.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you so
very
much.
Thank you.
All right.
To your whole team.
See you later today.
See you later today. Okay.
All right.
Bye.